In fact, now we have seen something called the Delta Plus variant.
Delta Plus. So
Yes.
meaning to say it's even more infectious than the Delta variant? Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Ketchup Club. On today's episode, we will be discussing on the topic of COVID-19 in Malaysia. Our guest is Dr. Shakilone Dharmasilan. He's a friend of mine, and we've known each other for about 2 decades now, and we've kept contact all along, and I'm just absolutely grateful that he's taking some time off his very busy schedule. So, Dr. Shakilone, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cassian, for having me here today. It's a great honor to be actually sitting down in front of you to be talking about this. So, especially, I'm sorry I was a bit late today. I just came back from work.
So, Dr. Shakilone, just before we go on, where you attached now? In what hospital are you at?
So I'm currently working in Sramban Hospital. So it's the largest hospital in Negeri Sembilan. I'm actually based in the medical department, currently doing my specialization along the medical lines. But for the past few months, I've been currently been put to do COVID duty in view of the overwhelming cases that we're actually facing and seeing in Negeri Sembilan.
Okay. When you say overwhelming, what is it like in your hospital, the one you're posted at right now?
So, Sramban Hospital is actually a hybrid hospital. So we actually see non-COVID cases and also COVID cases. But currently now, about 70% of our bulk is mostly COVID cases. All right. We have mostly all our wards been converted. So we doctors, nurses, and everyone, we actually currently now are doing frontliner duties, working 12-hour shifts. To man the wards. But unfortunately, we have come to find out that in view of the current constraints that we are facing, so we'll be actually been converting to a 24-hour on-call system. So to the dismay of the frontliner doctors who are actually working over there.
And I reckon you're doing all these hours in a PPE suit?
Yes, certainly.
My goodness, it must be really uncomfortable, huh?
Really. I mean, can you just imagine sitting in a room with no fan, with no ventilation, wearing all this equipments all around you? So that's how you feel, because once you wear the PPE, you can't really feel anything blowing onto you. So you're basically soaking yourself up in a hot sauna. So by the time you come out, you're dehydrated, you're tired, you're really hungry and thirsty, because once you actually don in, it's difficult for us to go and use the bathroom or to actually have some sips of water. So we are not allowed to do all of that during the times that we have donned in. We only don out in case of extreme emergencies. I mean, because as you know, the PPE is really expensive, so we can't be putting it on and just donning out to just go to the toilet. So yeah, that's how it is right now for us.
My lord, I can only imagine your struggles, given the fact that Malaysia is so hot these days. I'm sweating my butt off, with all the fans on. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine what you guys are going through.
Yep.
I must tell you, on behalf of everyone, we're really grateful for what you guys do.
Thank you.
Most of the time, it just goes unnoticed, but I'm telling you, we notice, especially after the fact that there was a video released recently of doctors voicing out their opinions. I mean, when you hear them breaking down, it really touches you. You start to question yourself. What am I doing that I'm burdening these people so much that we don't realize these things? Like, yeah, we go out despite the CMCO, we still have work to do and all that, right? When we see it tweeted every day from the KKM's Twitter or the news outlets, telling us to be careful, or even the texts, right? We get 3 a.m. texts from KKM telling us to be careful.
Yeah.
But when you hear it from your perspective as doctors, it's quite sad, that. But like I said, we're extremely grateful for whatever you've been doing. On that line also, doctor, how are the doctors doing? How are the nurses doing? How are the staffs doing in these times?
Yeah, we're all tired, exhausted and fatigued. I think because COVID has been actually going on for some time, and this has been taking a toll on all of us. So I mean, mentally and physically, our moral levels right now are really, really low, especially with the fact that the cases are actually not coming down and it's actually getting worse. So there's no, I mean, comes to a point where we seem to think there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So, I mean, hope is also low. Seeing patients dying every day has made you somewhat numb and cold. Um, we are used to seeing patients die, but never to such numbers. So it gets us thinking what's life all about. And it's a really depressing moment for all healthcare workers at this point of time.
Yeah, you mentioned also that the cases are on a rise. Like for instance, let's take today. For instance, today is the 23rd of July, and we saw 15,500 new cases. You know, um, it's extremely alarming, right, for us laymen. But what's your take on it when you see these kind of numbers?
So, I mean, um, the cases are going up due to currently, I can say, multiple factors, right? So, first of all, it's due to, I think, just exhaustion. I think everybody's just bored and tired. I mean, COVID has actually been going on now for what, 1.5 years? So, I think everyone is just done with it, all right? They just want to return to how it was pre-COVID era. So I think that's the problem that everybody is facing right now is actually just fatigued. Everyone just got lazy, all right? And also with the fact, like as you know, currently the emergence of the more virulent and more potent, more stronger and infective Delta variant. Okay, so Delta variant as of today is in 96 different countries. So Malaysia is not spared. It is 50% more infective. It is 50% more contagious, and it's 50% likely to make you more sicker than the alpha variants that were seen prior to this. So I think due to this culmination of factors of people getting tired of COVID and also the emergence of a new, more potent strain, I think this both put together is a recipe for disaster. And it's why, as you can see, the cases are rising so highly in Malaysia.
Yeah, just to double down on what you just mentioned, I was out and about in town today. I had to
Sure.
deliver a letter for my client. So when I was in town in Malacca, by the way, I was stuck in a traffic jam. You could only imagine in this kind of a time, traffic jam, and I was surprised. That many people on the road. But when you put it in context, like people are fatigued. Yes, they are because so many people are losing their jobs. But then again, while we are in that balance of losing jobs and also the COVID situation, which is extremely real, people are losing their lives, right? So I'm going to ask you a very premature sort of solution. In your opinion, what do you think could be a step that could be taken to curtail this? How do we curtail this
Well,
situation?
I think the most important thing that the Malaysian public has to realize that the only way out of it, the only main way out of it will be through vaccination. So, I mean, as you can see, the vaccination drive currently in Malaysia has really picked up pace and momentum. We are currently one of the highest vaccinating countries per capita population if compared around the world. All right. So, I think the only way out of it is if everyone vaccinates and we achieve herd immunity. And herd immunity is something that can only be achieved if at least 70% of the Malaysian population is vaccinated.
Okay, all right. And when you speak about vaccination, right, and we see these numbers, when you say people, most of them have already been vaccinated, right? Maybe they've already received both of their doses. Have you ever came across anyone who's been found to be positive after they've been vaccinated? They've received the full vaccination, the two doses. Have you came across?
Yeah. So actually, vaccination doesn't prevent you from getting COVID-19. It actually prevents you from getting a more severe case of COVID-19. So vaccination without following SOP is basically a futile attempt. So basically, if you are even vaccinated, you will still have to follow your what you call it, the standard operating procedure SOPs, because we do actually commonly see patients coming in fully vaccinated with both doses, getting COVID-19, but thankfully they are in the more non-dangerous category 1, category 2.
Okay, so what you're trying to suggest is that when they're in these two categories, there's a likelihood of them surviving it.
Yes, for sure, for sure, for sure.
All right, okay. So right now there's a new fear that is plaguing everyone. It's all over the news and all over everyone's minds. The Delta variant. So what is the Delta variant actually, in simple terms for people to understand?
So basically, previously the form of COVID-19 that was actually infecting around the world was an alpha variant, but as of December 2020, the emergence of a new Delta variant occurred in India. So basically, what is all this variant? So in the virus, we've actually got a form of the RNA in it, all right? So the nucleus. In the nucleus, there's basically the spike proteins, the proteins in the nucleus which can actually go through variation. That means once it infects from person to person to person, so after a certain number of times after being infected, it starts transforming, all right, and then it forms a new variant. So this Delta variant actually emerged in India, and as you can see, unfortunately, it was more infective and more stronger. So, and it's why you can see now there's an emergence of a second wave all around the world. In fact, now we have seen something called the Delta Plus variant, which is now
Wow.
UK and US mostly. As you can see, that is why the cases in UK and US are actually going up yet again, despite the vaccination drive over there.
Delta Plus. So
Yes.
meaning to say it's even more infectious than the Delta variant?
Yes, correct.
My lord, that is scary, huh? Once
It is, it is.
right now, as you mentioned, the only way that we could put a stop to it is the vaccination. And you've also mentioned that Malaysia has stepped up their vaccination attempts and efforts for the people, right? Before we go on, have you administered any vaccination for anyone?
So, thankfully, I mean, doctors mostly do not administer vaccination because they currently put us in more critical areas of coverage. We are actually taking care of the more ill patients. Our lovely nurses and medical assistants are the ones who are mostly administer the vaccine doses.
Okay, all right. So today it was reported in the news by Khairi Jamaluddin that 17 million doses have been given to the rakyat, right? And there are about 32.37 million Malaysian people. Okay, and it's forecasted that we will achieve herd immunity, as in 80%, by November this year. Do you reckon that these numbers make sense? Do you think that this is achievable?
Yes, for sure. For sure. I mean,
Definitely.
currently now, the Malaysian government, under the lead of the chief vaccination minister, which is YB Khairi, has been doing an amazing job. They have actually been opening up PPVs, which are your vaccine giving centers. So, and not only opening up of PPVs, but they've opened up mega scale PPVs. So,
Yes.
as to ensure the increased vaccination efforts. All right. In addition to that, they've actually recruited the general practitioners, doctors, all around Malaysia. All right, we've got about 5,000 private GPs, but as of now, the GPs of in Klang Valley are the ones who are currently administering the COVID-19 vaccine. So as we see more and more doctors administering it from the private setup, and now they're recruiting private hospitals to also administer vaccine. So I think by November, hopefully, we can achieve our herd immunity.
Okay, that is somewhat a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm hoping that we actually come out stronger at the end, because looking at the current situation, everything is so bleak. That's what is being portrayed in the news, you know. I just hope everyone keeps faith and we march on. So you did mention that, you know, the current vaccination, and you're quite hopeful that it will work out, right? However, the current general idea that is spread amongst the people is that the vaccination process is quite slow. Is maybe it was slow back then, but it has definitely been stepped up right now. That is a fact, right? But people are still complaining that this is slow. And there's also qualms of them getting, how do you say, others are being slotted above them, not following the proper structure, etc., etc. Everyone has an opinion of things. Like for me personally, I registered for vaccination on the 24th of February. This was quite some time back. I have not received my first dose, even my first dose. But I know of people younger than me, even in Malacca, maybe a 19-year-old who has already received a first dose, you know? So this is happening, right? So now I want to ask you, do you think it is working, or do you think people are just overreacting, you know, because with the current situation whereby COVID is just becoming more and more and more scary?
Cassian, so that was a wonderful question. So, all right. So, talking about these things about queue jumping. All right. So, I can first and foremost, I must say that um, the vaccination in drive has to follow a thing what we call of triaging and priority. As of this point of time, they are currently focusing on those above 65 years old because they are the more vulnerable group. Okay, so they will be prioritized first. Secondly, they would like to prioritize those with any forms of medical illnesses. So, me per se, when I'm seeing my patients who are possibly 15, who are possibly 17, 18 years old, who are already vaccinated, is because they most likely already have an illness and they're being seen in the hospital. So when we see them in the hospital, we straight away offer them a slot and say, do you want to be vaccinated soon? Okay,
Right.
because
Okay.
they have illness and they're more immunocompromised. So what do we mean by patients who are immunocompromised? That means they've got a weak immune system. This
Right.
is
Okay.
normally seen in patients who have got cancer, all right, who have got received some form of drugs, okay, which is to, bring down the immune system in all those patients with actually an autoimmune condition like thyroiditis or something what we call SLE and things like that. We give them very strong drugs to bring down the immune system. So all these patients are very vulnerable, right? So in all these patients, they actually prioritized to receive the vaccine first, even though they are younger. So people will be saying, hey, they are younger. How did they receive the vaccine first? It is because of a stage what we call a triaging and prioritizing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So there are also cases whereby, you know, you receive the appointment and then you don't confirm yourself, or rather you confirm and then last minute you pull out and you don't make it. So I know that the people in charge of the vaccination, they are allowed to call up another person or the next person on the list, you know, to come right now or come today or come tomorrow and get your vaccine, right? What happens when they don't come, when that slot is not covered and it just remains that way? What happens to that dose of vaccine for that day? Where does it go?
So normally what happens is that let me talk about the Pfizer vaccine. Okay, so an
Okay.
unopened vial normally can last for about a month in room temperature, and about an open vial, that means they've already diluted it, okay, to administer, can last about 5 to 6 days in the fridge. So once it is open, I'm pretty sure in our mega PPVs, if they don't give it today, they're still able to give it tomorrow. So it's not going to be wasted. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we have got ample of people actually on the backup list. So in every hospital, we've got a backup list of people who we call in case the patient who is supposed to turn up on that day does not turn up. So as of today, I've never seen any vaccines being wasted because, as you know, vaccination. Everybody's that's a new craze in Malaysia. Everybody's trying to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Yeah, so it's not wasted, Cation.
So the next one regarding the vaccines also, right?
Sure.
There's another thing going on in the news right now that they are, or rather in the WhatsApp groups as well, they're telling you, hey, you should start to record yourself, you know, because right now they are not actually giving you the vaccine, it's just an empty bottle. And then I think YB Kyrie also mentioned it today in his press conference that I think so far there were 3 complaints made with regards to empty bottles. So what is your take on that? Do you think that why are they even doing such a thing, you know?
To be honest, what I feel, and it's also what the government says today, the COVID immunization task force has actually come out with a formal circular to say that patients actually allowed to record
Yeah.
the vaccination process just to ensure this transparency. Sometimes I feel you can't really see because you're taking a zero point 0.3 ml. You know what I mean? It's a really small, colorless liquid. which is going into a syringe. And unless you have got a 6/6 vision, I feel it's really difficult for someone to actually comment and see whether there's any fluid in that small syringe. 0.3 mils is really nothing much. Okay, so it can be a lot of the mind making it up. And also, I mean, for the benefit of the doubt, you must understand that there are some people who are administering vaccines for in like an hour, like about 35 to 40 patients per hour. So it becomes more of an automated process. Sometimes due to fatigue at your end of your shift. I know it's unacceptable, but it does happens. Human error does occurs. Sometimes being so fatigued after a long vaccination drive, so you might accidentally not syringe it out or syringe out incorrect or inadequate amounts. I mean, those cases do occur, but I guess they are extremely rare that actually occur.
Hmm. No, that's the thing. People, that's a fact that we have to take into account. You're right, that the human errors, people are bound to make it. And on top of that, these people, they're sitting down there for God knows how many hours.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
as you were mentioning just now, all of you guys are really, really fatigued. And I
Yeah.
just noticed, after so long being in this conversation, that you are at a beach. So, but right now, oh, I bet you really wish to be on vacation right
Yeah,
now.
I guess that I can't go to the beach. I guess it's the closest I am to a beach, right?
Okay, so now we will step out of the vaccination and all that. So now I'm going to ask you certain questions with regards to stigma surrounding COVID, right?
Sure.
When I say stigma, what have you faced as a doctor, right? Like any of the patients who has gotten COVID and survived it, what kind of stigma do you think, or rather have you witnessed them facing when they return back to the general public?
So I guess in this point of time, a lot of stigma happens to patients and even healthcare staff who actually get infected with COVID, who actually work in the COVID wards. I think the general public is obviously very afraid of COVID. Um, it is something that we can't see. So, I mean, you're not really worried about it. But I guess once you know a person is infected with it, you know that they might, I mean, the fear is, oh my God, this patient actually had COVID before. Can he still pass it to me now? But I mean, as you know, at this point of time in Malaysia, so we normally off-tag patients. That means we say that they're not infective. At different categories, they have different days. So normally we normally say more than 14 days, they should be not infective anymore. Okay. So, but in the general public, they might actually think that this patient is still infective. So I think that's why they are mostly stigmatized.
um, Recently, I think it was shared on Facebook and also certain news outlets. I don't know if you know about this. I think on Sunday there was some testing being done in Portuguese settlement Malacca, and about 150 of them were, they had the pink tag put on them, right? And the automatic stigma that was formed was 150 people were found positive. When the fact of the matter is that's not true. I think barely about 50 of them were found positive, right? And so much so that some of these people from Portuguese settlement, it's a big community.
Sure.
And they were heading out, they need to buy their stuff, to survive, from shops. Shops were not allowing them to enter,
Sure.
They say like, no, you're from settlement? No, don't come in.
But did they go to the shop with a pink tag on?
No.
No, all right, okay.
Nothing on them, but people are generally afraid,
Afraid. Yeah, all right.
But that is the situation everybody, sorry?
The stigma is there.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate truth. But then again, with today's infectious rate, can you really blame them?
Yep,
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And that leads me to my other question. When someone is given the pink tag, right, does it necessarily mean that they are 100% positive? Why are they given the pink tag?
So they give basically a pink tag is not given to those who are positive. Pink tags are given to those who are basically undergoing a swab. So when they're undergoing a swab, they are what you call a person under surveillance. So at that point of time, they're given a pink tag to basically identify themselves that they're currently awaiting their COVID results. So if they're positive, then they're either at home quarantine and they can't come out. So some of them with pink tags can also mean that they are under home quarantine, awaiting the swab results, and some of them who are actually positive. Because once you wear the tag and then you turn out positive, category 1, category 2, we all keep them at home. So they don't have to
Okay.
come to the hospital. So they will still have their pink tag on. So a pink tag, you can be positive, you can also be negative and having the tag on.
This is because this is another stigma. I think you would know this also. The
Sure.
moment they say pink tag, they start chasing you everywhere. I mean, you're not supposed to be out. You're not supposed to be out, right?
And
The fact that you're out, you're asking for trouble. But then again, pink tag doesn't necessarily mean you will end up being positive.
yes. But if
Okay.
because you wouldn't know you're positive, right? And what happens if you go out and then you infect everybody and then you actually turn out to be positive? That's why we
Mm,
tag you and say you don't go out, and you hence you labeled as such.
okay. There's also a suggestion right now that there could be a possibility of introducing 3 doses of vaccine to people. Is it needed?
So well, actually, thankfully, premium university in Malaysia, University Malaya, is currently conducting a clinical research, to see whether a third dose will actually be beneficial. At this point of time, in view of the constraints that we're facing with the shortage of vaccine worldwide, it will seem a little bit inappropriate to be giving someone 3 doses of vaccine when there's some people around the country who not even got 1 dose. So that is why they're currently focusing on at least vaccinating the whole population with at least 1 dose. Then we'll focus with the second dose, and a booster dose is only would be necessary if we have got adequate um, vaccine availability throughout the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
So,
it will also arise at the same time when our University Malaya comes out with their results to see whether a booster dose would be needed.
also right now, it is not really confirmed whether it's really needed or
No,
not.
it's not. The study is being done whether a third dose should be needed.
In your opinion, do you think it would make any difference if you get another extra dose? Would it be making you a little bit more immune to the virus in itself?
So I mean, yeah, this would have to be in proper study, because what
Yeah.
happens after we inoculate the vaccine into us? So normally our body will mount an immune response whereby we form antibodies against the COVID virus. So there has to be an objective study to show what type of vaccine we are giving, how much of antibodies is being produced. Because if you give 3, then will there be benefits if you give 4? Will there be benefits if you give a person 5? So like, what is the maximum amount of shots that we can actually give? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah, yeah.
studied very well and scientifically proven whether more is actually better, or whether there's just going to be more side effects from getting more and more jabs.
Right. Okay. Okay. So the next one,
Sure.
I'm pretty sure you came across of this. So, mixing of vaccines, as in
Sure.
like 1 dose they get AstraZeneca and the other one is Sinovac. You know, what about this? Is there any weight to it?
Sure. So as we can see that there are studies which are being done around the world to actually show the efficacy of vaccine mixing and matching. So currently now in Spain, they're actually doing a trial with about 600 plus patients, whereby the first dose they're being administered with AstraZeneca, and then 4 weeks later they're actually giving them an Pfizer vaccine. So they want to see whether there's potent. At this point of time, the studies look quite promising that by administering the first dose of AstraZeneca, second dose of Pfizer, that actually they form a very good immune response. So why does it occur is still actually under studies. I also would think that mixing it would actually be good, because it actually kind of reduces the side effects. So as we can see that those with the AstraZeneca vaccine they're at a slightly higher risk of developing a blood clot in the body. So I think by giving them 2 doses, it would increase the risk. Whereas if you mix and match it, so you're actually giving them a different kind of vaccine. So it obviously hopefully reduce the side effects that is seen with one specific vaccine. But I think these are all under studies, and
Okay.
we'd only know more in the future of how it's going to
Okay. Okay. But would you be equipped to share your opinion on whether mixing of vaccines over the original 2 batches of vaccines, which is better in terms of combating the virus in itself, as in the COVID-19?
Sure.
Is this better or is this better?
Yeah,
Is
no.
that?
Um,
No?
I'm, we have to wait for more studies. It has to be, because currently, like I told you, what they're doing in Spain, they're working with 600 patients. They want to see like how is it, how much of antibodies, what happens. Is it because currently now they're only doing with AstraZeneca first dose, second dose is your Pfizer. What happens if you give? Is it more effective than a Pfizer vaccine, or is it more effective than AstraZeneca vaccine? Like, or currently now they are saying that those in Thailand who have been given the Sinovac vaccine, they say they want to be topped up with like an AstraZeneca, because they said that it's a different, because as you know, your Sinovac vaccine is a whole vaccine which they have killed, but whereas your Oxford and AstraZeneca vaccines are your mRNA vaccines, which are different vaccines. So
Ah,
currently now they want to see if you were to mix this both, whether you'll become more effective. So all of this is under study, so it'd be very premature for me to comment.
all right, okay. So, Dr. Shaki, I
Mm,
believe I've reached the end of my list of questions. I mean, I had really a lot.
sure.
Thank you so much for having the patience to share all your inputs on this.
My pleasure. My
So,
pleasure.
before we part,
Sure.
do you have any advice for the viewers? Because we don't necessarily get the opportunity to hear from people who are on the field like yourself. And like I've mentioned just now, I think I'm very fortunate to be able to ask you this question directly. And I think whatever you've shared today would be really beneficial to whoever who's watching this.
Sure.
Because I'm pretty sure all these questions are playing in their minds. So do you have any advice for them?
So, I mean, if you were to ask me, the first things first is stay safe and follow these SOPs. That's the most important thing. And secondly, I think if you were to ask me, it's vaccination. Vaccination is the way to go. I mean, we all have to do this to achieve herd immunity in Malaysia. And if you're worried, if you have got any queries about vaccines and the side effects, please speak to your doctors. And I'm pretty sure that we can advise and answer any queries that you have as to increase, I mean, our chances of coming back to the new normal.
So I guess that's it. Thank you
That's
so
it.
much, Dr.
Thank you very much,
Shaki.
Kishan.
I
Thank you.
hope I hope we'll be able to speak again on this podcast in the
Sure.
future under better circumstances.
Thank you very much for having me, Kishan.
No problem. It's a pleasure. So stay safe and see you soon.